This is the Tulsa World Newsroom podcast. This is Jason Collington, editor of the Tulsa World. Happy to be here with Michael Decker, one of our assistant editors, who also writes a lot for us. One of the topics he's been writing about is sports betting and if it's coming to Oklahoma, what the future looks like, what's been going on in the legislature. Our session just started, and there are a lot of issues that our legislator is looking at. And this is one topic that's going to be brought up. Mike's done some reporting and posted some stories on it so far. Mike, if an Oklahoman is sitting here going, is this going to happen? Are we going to have sports betting in Oklahoma? What, based on your reporting and with the people you talk to, how do you feel?
If I were to place a bet on it, so to speak, not to be too coy about this, but I would say it's a little bit better than 50%, which is better than in the past, because there actually has been a bill that's been introduced right before the session started by Representative Ken Luttrell from Ponca City, which before this has not even been brought up in the legislature ever since the U.S. Supreme Court back in 2018 came down with a decision that it was a case brought by the state of New Jersey that wanted legalized sports betting, and the court agreed with them and said, yes, you may legalize it, and other states may legalize it if they choose to do so. After that decision, there was, a lot of talk in the state, given how the large presence, obviously, of how many casinos we have here, right, the gaming presence, that it would be kind of a done deal. But that hasn't happened. And one of the big obstacles for most people cite is the ongoing disputes between Governor Kevin Stitt and tribal leaders. There's been basically three things they've been fighting about. One was about 2 years ago. There's a fight about the existing gaming compacts. The governor thought the state was not getting enough money. I believe the percentages are anywhere from, I think it's 2 to 5%, and maybe a little bit more than that, depending on what type of gaming it is. He wanted that to go up, I believe, to about 10%. Of course, the tribes, didn't want that. They not only use that money for to improve their existing gaming facilities, but a lot of that money goes toward infrastructure for the tribes, roads, water lines, education, healthcare. So they obviously didn't want to give up a cut if they didn't have to. And there's this it ended up going to the Oklahoma Supreme Court. And there were two issues that the Supreme Court basically ruled in favor of the tribes on both issues. One of them is whether or not the governor had sole authority to renegotiate the compacts between the state. And the other thing was whether or not the compacts automatically renewed, because the language was unclear. It could be read different ways. And the governor argued that, well, if we don't reach an agreement, they don't renew. But the Supreme Court ruled in favor and said, yes, they do. And so we've got another 15 years of at least the existing compacts. And what Representative Luttrell's bill would do is add legalized sports betting to the existing gaming compact, would provide, I believe, 10% in revenue toward the state. But as to whether or not it's going to happen, a lot of it will depend on legislative leadership. And
again, for people who don't have an idea of what this is, I mean, I have had the experience to be at the Hilton in Vegas right before the NFL season started, and to see that spectacle of a place that's very, very large, long lines, prop bets. You can bet on anything. The whole season's ahead of you. And there's a lot of people that do that, and they don't play blackjack. They don't play roulette. They don't play the slots. It is certainly a thing among itself. And I'm sure that a lot of Oklahomans would want to bet on it. We have, we're pretty much football crazed state. And so I think both you and I agree, it would be popular if it happened.
Absolutely. Well, the numbers are staggering. There's a website out there called legalsportsreport.com, and they do regular updates. They estimate, and the last estimate that I looked at it for my story, it was over, since the Supreme Court decision in 2018, there's been over $92 billion that's been bet legally. There's been like 30 states plus the District of Columbia that have legalized sports betting. So yes, it would definitely be popular here. I believe Representative Luttrell's, and he put out a news release after he introduced this bill, and he estimated about $240 million a year in revenue for the state. That doesn't include how much money could be generated for the tribes, because the tribes here, the way the compacts are set up, they have exclusivity when it comes to gaming. So like the Hilton or the Mirage or whatever from Las Vegas can't come into Oklahoma and build a casino. The tribes have exclusivity for that. And I believe his bill, or he also estimated about 3,000 permanent and temporary jobs if it were to become legalized here.
So we're in Oklahoma, and if you told us 10 years ago that we'd have medical marijuana to the extent that we do with dispensaries all over the place, some people will be like, that's never going to happen. We've got some petitions that are coming up this year that could possibly legalize marijuana in Oklahoma completely. So sports betting is not too far off on things that we said would never happen.
Right.
And again, tell me about what's the session just started. We got the Super Bowl Sunday, this coming up this Sunday. So what is the mood like? What's the feeling like if this bill is it even going to get out of committee? What's the feeling at the Capitol if this thing's going to happen or not?
Well, a couple different things. Barbara Hobrock helped me out with the story. She's our one of our Capitol reporters and has been for many years, covering the state Capitol in Oklahoma City. And she was able to get a comment through the Speaker of the House, Charles McCall, and the Senate Pro Tem, Greg Treat, who are the leaders of both chambers. And through their spokesman, they said they had no comment, which I wasn't sure what to make of that. I talked to Barbara a little bit afterward on the phone, and she said that realistically, what they're going to do is the leaders of the House and the Senate will get with their members of their caucuses and sort of take their temperature on this issue and see where they stand. She said that obviously there are a lot of very conservative legislators here in Oklahoma, and there are quite a few. She said that just they don't like gaming. Period. That they don't, and they see legalized sports betting as an expansion of gaming. They see gaming as a vice. They see it as a bad thing on society, which is understandable, and I respect that opinion. I mean, there's people in power that they don't like you mentioned, legalized medical marijuana. There are other people that don't like expanded alcohol laws, and I get that. I get that argument. But on the other hand, the proponents of legalized sports betting would they have two arguments. One is that it's already being done, as everybody knows, in this state.
Right.
Only it's illegal. I mean, you can get online, you can do it. People who know bookies, even law enforcement will say, yes, this goes on all the time here. If you really want to, you can find a way to do it. And then the second argument that the proponents have is that the regional states around us have already legalized it. And all it takes is for somebody, you can just jump in your car and drive a few hours, go to Arkansas and make a bet on the Super Bowl. You can drive, 5.5 hours from here to the Shreveport, Bossier City area in Louisiana, make a bet on the Super Bowl. You go to New Mexico, Colorado, they're a little bit further, but and people.
There's a lot of Oklahomans who have grown up driving to Missouri to get strong beer.
Yes, exactly.
That was in our recent history.
Yes.
And now it's driving to go make a bet. It's driving to do certain things. And that argument of, well, let's not have people travel across state lines to do something that we could legalize here,
right?
Make money on, make taxes on, create jobs with. I mean, that's that argument of, well, if you can go to Kansas or Missouri, why can't you do it here? And again, that argument, I think, always comes back around to, why are we giving our money away to other states?
Right.
That's the same infrastructure, the same policies, the same regulations, and do that here.
Yeah, and that website that I mentioned about the legalized sports betting, they also, that's a huge number, $92 billion since 2018 that's been legally bet. But they also estimated that nearly $1 billion have gone to state and local governments in these states that have legalized sports betting. One of the things that I really enjoyed when I did the last story, that I believe it ran on the 31st of January, and it's still on our website, tulsaworld.com, is I had a fairly extensive and really good interview with Matthew Morgan, the chairman of the Oklahoma Indian Gaming Association. And, we talked a little bit about some of the ongoing disputes between the governor's office and tribal leaders. And, in his words, he said that you can't take one issue like legalized sports gaming or other things and separate it from the entire landscape of that relationship between the tribal leaders and the governor. And he said that really needs to be kind of a first step. And there was a picture that we ran in the paper today of the governor shaking hands with Representative Luttrell, of all people, and he's the one that introduced the bill. One other quick anecdote about this is that a couple of days ago, I had a call from a state senator who was calling me about something completely unrelated. It was a business story that we were running in a Sunday, and he just wanted to kind of talked to me a little bit about that. And then I said, well, Senator, since I have you on the phone, did you get a chance? I did this story about legalized, and he asked, and so I told him a little bit about it. And he said, well, who introduced the bill? And I told him, and he said, well, does it have a Senate sponsor yet? And I said, well, I'm not sure. I haven't checked it yet, but he goes, okay. But just by him asking me that question shows me that there is some interest in this issue, and whether or not it'll be up to the legislative leadership, really. And the other thing that Barbara mentioned too, is that even if Representative Luttrell's bill, for whatever reason, doesn't get taken up, the leadership has the power to take any bill with completely unrelated language, strip out that language, and put in the language for legalized sports betting if they chose to do that. So
yeah, and what's interesting that the state of the state just happened yesterday, and Governor mentioned the fact that he wants to look at some of the revenue streams that are coming in and what we can do there. And again, he promised more by taxing us less. That was the thesis of his state of the state, a popular thesis of state of the states over the years. And again, this is an opportunity to bring in a whole bunch of revenue. Now, I can't talk about this topic without, some of my reporting that I did back in the day. I spent hours at Gamblers Anonymous meetings. So I was reporting back when the casinos first opened. And in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, there weren't that many Gamblers Anonymous meetings. A year after the casinos opened, there were so many more, and they were full. Yeah. And, all of us know that we either someone or know of someone who's had a gambling problem. I know members of my family have lost a lot of things because of gambling, but there is that percentage that it's just like when we raise the speed limit 5 more miles, there is going to be a chance of more car accidents. There is a cause and effect with everything.
Right.
I can tell you that I think the Gamblers Anonymous communities in Oklahoma and in Tulsa, they have met the need, and they are dealing with those people who just lose control when it comes to gambling. But I would say at the same time, you've got to look at that too. You've got to look at the social effects. We are a state that has so many deaths of despair. We're a state that has a lot of people that are struggling. And so you can't bring up topics like this, especially something like gambling, it's an emotional thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without pointing those things out. But as I said, we're going to find out. As I said, we got Super Bowl Sunday this Sunday. What did you say? How much money is being bet on that? Is the estimates?
Yeah, the Associated Press today moved the story that we're planning on running. They cited the National Gaming Organization. I believe it's the American Gaming Association or something. But they estimated 37.5 million people would be betting on the Super Bowl, and that's a 35% increase from last year. And it's mostly because of legalized sports betting in all these states. And the total amount, and this includes legalized, illegal, betting, having bets with your uncle, office pools, is estimated to be $7.6 billion that are going to be bet in some way or another on the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday. Well, and by the way, Jason, the bottom of that story actually has a 1-800 number for if you have a gambling problem. So even the Associated Press and national stories do acknowledge that you're right. I mean, this is an issue that, that does, with a certain amount of people, it's like a lot of other issues that people will have problems with it. And so I was glad to see that in the AP story.
Well, when you posed the question in this morning's editor meeting, how much is being spent on betting on the Super Bowl? My estimate of 200 million was a little off, a bit off, just a bit outside. Decker, one of the things also I think that's really important in this topic, again, and I appreciate your reporting on it, because it said you're an assistant editor, but at the same time, just like all of us, we got to pick up a byline here once in a while. We got to write some things, and this is something you've kind of gone in depth with. What is something maybe someone's not thinking about when you've done your reporting? What is something that they're not thinking about when it comes to this issue? Is there something you talked about the tribes and the governor and how that's got to work something out there? We got the legislation. What else is it that people need to be thinking about when they need to find out where they side on this issue?
You mean as far as resources go, or
just when someone's trying to make their opinion, like, am I for it or am I against it? We brought up the gambling issue. We brought up certain things. What else does a person need to think about to come to an opinion on this? Because it's likely they might have to vote on it.
Yeah, I think you have to just really look at both, all the different, you're right. There are a lot of different facets to this issue. And I think it depends on your perspective. If you're a tribal member or a tribal leader, you're going to have a completely different perspective than if you're a conservative, preacher out in, some rural county somewhere. And so those perspectives are going to be different. But, you can look at our reporting. One of our editorial writers, Bob Doucette, wrote a great column about the disputes between the governor and the tribes recently, that people can look at that, because like Mr. Morgan said, you can't really separate this issue from the entire landscape with the governor and the tribes. So I think really that dynamic, and also you might, ask, your state legislator where they stand on this issue. If you're a tribal member, contact your tribal leadership and say, where do you stand on this issue? Why are you for it? Why are you against it? And you can get some different perspectives and then form your own opinion based on that, because there are going to be different perspectives on this, I think.
Well, one of the future stories I think you're going to do is I think when we get some of these states that have legalized it, look at a year later, 2 years later. What are the effects? What are the effects when it comes to bankruptcy? What are the effects when it comes to revenue to the state, to the city? We'll need to probably pick out a couple cities and have you. I mean, I'm not saying it's a road trip. I'm just saying we might need to have you check out and see what has happened, because that's what we did with medical marijuana. We checked with some of the states that had passed this and figured out, okay, this is what happened in this state, and these are the results that they didn't think were going to happen. There's always things that happen that you didn't expect when it comes to new legislation. So we'll definitely look for that story when we dig more into this. As I said, the session just started. We'll see if this gets picked up as a bill that goes through either House or Senate, and go from there. Michael Decker, appreciate the time. This is your first time on the Tulsa World Newsroom podcast. It won't be your last. Just want to remind everyone, not only is this podcast, but all of the 8 Tulsa World podcasts available not only on Apple, but also Google and Spotify. We try to do this weekly here in the Newsroom podcast, where, again, I interview the great editors, reporters, photographers of the Tulsa World to try to give you the stories behind the stories. So thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next time.